Now that we know a little bit about NURBS curves, let's talk about NURBS surfaces. A NURBS surface is essentially the same as a NURBS curve, except it has one extra dimension. A curve defines a line, whereas a surface defines a plane. But many of the same tools that you'd use to create NURBS curves, you can use for NURBS surfaces. So let's talk a little bit about surfaces and how they're created and what makes them up. To create a basic NURBS surface, you can just go to your Create panel and go down to NURBS surfaces. And we have two types of surfaces, and very similar to our curves. We have a point and a CV surface. So the point surface is, if you've guessed by now, it pretty much is the same as a point curve. I'm going to go ahead and create that by clicking and dragging in the front viewport. And then I'm going to go over to the Modify panel. And as you do, the same little toolbox comes up. And if we expand this here over in this rollout here, we have the surface itself, and then we have the points on the surface. And if we highlight points, we can select the points and move them. And just like with the curve, in fact, I'm going to go here in this perspective viewport here. Just like with the point curve, the point surface always touches the points defining the surface. Very similar to the point curve. But the one thing the point surface doesn't have is, just like with NURBS curves, it doesn't have weighting on the points. So you're pretty much stuck with the default curvature there. I'm going to go ahead and click here as to select the surface, the whole object here, and delete. And then I'm going to go back over to my front viewport, and let's go ahead and create a CV surface. So I'm going to go to my Create panel, make sure I got NURBS surfaces here, CV surface, click, drag, click again, and we have a CV surface. Let's go over to Modify, and I'm going to bring up my perspective here again. In this rollout, you'll notice we have a sub-object for the surface, and then one for the surface CVs. Now, the surface CVs are very similar to the curve CVs, but they're different in that they work along two axes. So where a curve CV just works along the axis of the curve, the surface CV actually works along both axes of the intersection. So if I move that, it actually moves both of these curves and affects how the surface moves. So for example, if I move that, it's very similar to a CV curve, in that the lines don't these lines don't particularly fall on the actual points themselves. The points are defining the curvature, but not the actual curve doesn't flow through the points. Now, if you've done any modeling with Mesh Smooth, you pretty much can equate this to the subdivision cage that we use when we model using Mesh Smooth. That the cage itself is actually surrounding the object, but the object itself doesn't. The curved object is actually within the cage. So now that we've created a simple NURBS surface, we can go on to some other ways of copying that surface. Just like with curves, we have a couple of different types of surfaces here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and into my front viewport here so we can kind of see how this works. We can create what's called a transform surface. So if I click on that, select the surface, hold down and drag with my left click, I can create a surface, again, that's very similar to the transform curve that we created. So creating modifying the initial surface changes the transform surface as well, and all that's different is that the transform surface is at a different location. This isn't updating that well, but you can still kind of see how this is working. So if I change this surface here, that surface changes as well. So it's basically just an identical surface, and the only difference is the actual physical offset of it. I'm going to go ahead and delete this surface here, this transform surface. Select my initial surface again, and we can also create what's called an offset surface. So if I click and drag, if I drag one way or the other, you can see how it creates an offset. Now what this is it's actually a curvature offset, just like with the offset curve. So if you wanted, for example, if you had a cylinder and you wanted to turn it into a pipe or something, then you could actually drag the curvature of the cylinder out and create a circle within a circle to create a pipe. That's how offset surface works. Go ahead and select this surface here, and I'm going to delete it again. And then we also have, just like with curves, we have what's called mirror surface. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that, and then mirror that surface. And so now I have a surface that's mirrored. I'm going to go right click off of that and just go over here and select this surface. And again, I can mirror it over a number of different axes, and I can create my own type of offset here with this rollout, and so on and so forth. Now if you notice, when I go this way, the curves kind of disappear. That's because they're really just like planes. They're one-sided surfaces. One way to fix that, if you want, you could flip normals on your objects. But if you want to see both sides, then you can go into your configuration here. If you right-click here on this perspective window, or front, back viewports, or whatever, and hit configure, you can force two-sided, and that will force it to render the back faces. So that way, if you have a problem with normals, typically it depends on how I'm modeling, but typically I like to keep it turned off so I know and I can see that my normals are all facing the right way. But sometimes it's handy just to be able to see the back of an object or something like that. Now that we have the basics of creating a patch down, you can also create a patch by using curves. And that's probably the way that you're going to be doing most of your modeling. So let's, in our next little segment, we'll go ahead and show you how to create patches and surfaces from curves.